So today's topic of discussion is anesthesia management for coiling for aneurysmal subarachnoid hemorrhage. So we'll go through this entire topic. We'll start with the basic definition of aneurysmal SAH. We'll go through the clinical presentation of this topic. Then we'll go how the patient will present to you, what all preoperative investigations you are supposed to do, and how will you manage the patient when it comes for coiling in the DSA lab. So, starting with the basic definition of aneurysmal subarachnoid hemorrhage, as you can see in the figures over here, they are representing the different shapes of aneurysm. So, it is the collection of blood in the subarachnoid space after an aneurysm rupture. The most common cause of which is non-traumatic SAH, maybe secondary to hypertension or cocaine abuse or smoking. It is exceptional in children and its incidence increases with the age. The global incidence is about 8 cases per 1 lakh cases. You can very well see in these images there are different types of aneurysms depending upon the shape of the aneurysm. So basically, it is a deviation in the normal flow of the blood in the vessels because of an abnormal shearing stress and deformation of the vessels. So it can be saccular in shape, it can be a round fusiform in shape, it can be a dissecting aneurysm, it can be a ruptured aneurysm, which is again difficult to deal with, or it can be a false aneurysm. So depending upon the type, shape, and size of aneurysm, the clinical presentation, the morphology, we have to choose the patients, the neurosurgeons basically they choose whether the patient can undergo coiling and clipping. And today's point of discussion is anesthesia considerations in a patient who has presented to us for aneurysm coiling. So this is a cross section of the different types of aneurysm based on the location. So as you know, this is the circle of Willis, which supplies our brain parenchyma. So most of the aneurysms you can see in the anterior circulation, 40% of them are situated at the anterior communicating artery level. Some of them are present at the basilar tip level, maybe 4% of them, and 34% of the aneurysms may be at the middle cerebral artery level. So depending upon the location, the patient will come to us with different symptoms. When we say aneurysm, there are certain fixed risk factors which lead to the formation as well as the rupture of aneurysm. So when we think of formation of aneurysms, so they are mainly seen in patients who are chronic hypertensives, uncontrolled hypertension, smokers, chronic alcohol intake, female sex and family history of first degree relatives. They have higher incidences of aneurysm formations. Again, some inherited diseases, they have a strong association with cystic kidney diseases. So whenever someone of your family or a first degree relative is already diagnosed with autosomal dominant polycystic kidney disease, you have to get the entire family, especially the first degree relatives, screened for this condition. Then there are certain conditions like Marfan's syndrome, neurofibromatosis type 1, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and fibromuscular dysplasias. All these conditions have weak associations with intracranial aneurysm. So, regarding not all aneurysms rupture, there are certain aneurysms which have high propensity of getting ruptured, which include female sex, patients with smoking, uncontrolled hypertension, cocaine abuse, and posterior circulating aneurysms or very huge or giant aneurysms. They have a higher propensity of getting ruptured. So which aneurysms rupture? So the incidence of rupture is approximately 0.95% annually. And as we have seen, smoking, hypertension, cocaine abuse, and alcohol excessive usage, all these leads to increased risk of rupture. The risk of rupture also varies according to the size. So maybe a giant ruptures or more than 7 mm and the location. So with anterior and posterior aneurysms, they are at a higher risk of rupture than the middle cerebral artery aneurysms. So why this happens? Because the rupture of intracranial aneurysm occurs due to hemodynamic shear stress on the weakened arterial wall. For instance, in the case of a sudden increase in the cerebrovascular arterial pressure, it may lead to an increased shear stress on the vessel wall, leading to rupture. So after rupture, what happens? There is free communication between the intravascular space and the subarachnoid space, with consequent extravasation of the blood into the subarachnoid space as well, which continues until there is equalization of the pressure gradient between these two compartments, namely the intravascular space and the subarachnoid space. So this process is responsible for the sudden onset severe headache which the patient complains, or the sudden transient or permanent loss of consciousness. There is a terminology called a daughter sac, which is technically an irregular protrusion of the sac wall of the aneurysm. And so this may also rupture, and also a large size ratio defined as the aneurysm to the vessel size ratio. That is the ratio of aneurysm to the parent vessel size. So if it is larger, then also there is an increased risk of aneurysmal rupture. So all these factors or conditions or risk factors lead to an increased incidences of aneurysm rupture. So how does a patient present to you? Maybe you are doing an emergency duty and a patient comes in the casualty with a ruptured aneurysm. How will you raise the suspicion of a ruptured aneurysm? So the most common things is headache. So the interesting concept here is most aneurysms, they remain undetected during one's lifetime or until they rupture. So the aneurysm is often an incidental finding during investigations for other causes of intracranial pathology. So they present to us with headache. Now, sometimes based on the symptoms with which they present,